You're watching GCTV, Community Access Cable Channel 15 in Greenfield, Massachusetts.
All of our productions at GCTV are sponsored in part by Bay State Health, providing the care you and your family need when you need it close to home. Visit them online at baystatehealth.org. Greenfield Savings Bank. Visit them at 400 Main Street in Greenfield. Call them at 774-3191 or go online to greenfieldsavings.com. Greenfield Community College, providing access and excellence in higher education in the Pioneer Valley. Visit them at gcc.mass.edu. The Hammond Family. The Hammond family are longtime supporters of Greenfield Community Television. New Fortune Chinese Restaurant on the Mohawk Trail in Greenfield. Visit them online at newfortunema.com. Call them at 772-0838 and check them out on Facebook. Real Cleaning Services, cleaning Hampshire and Franklin County since 1972. We don't cut corners, we clean them. Check them out online at realclean.com. Call them at 413-422-1143. People's United Bank, located at 45 Federal Street in Greenfield. You can call them at 774-3713 or visit them online at peoples.com. The Solar Store of Greenfield, replacing fossil fuels and nuclear power one home at a time. Visit them at 23 Fisk Ave. Call them at 413-772-3122 or visit them online at solarstoreofgreenfield.com. Thank you to our sponsors for supporting all of GCTV's productions.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the John Zahn Community Center for the Ways and Means meeting of Thursday, May 9th. I'm going to call this meeting to order. It's 6:02. I'm Otis Wheeler. I'm the chair. This meeting's being recorded, videotaped, and broadcast. If anyone else is doing the same, please let me know. Roll call. Councilor Mayo.
Here.
Councilor Mass is not here yet. I'm going to hit record on the device. Hitting record. Councilor Dolan.
Present.
Councilor Alice is absent tonight. We have no approval of minutes, no public hearing. Yes? Well, public hearing is different from public comment. Public comment is not on our regular schedules for Ways and Means. It wasn't planned, but I will accept it, yes. So anyone who'd like to deliver public comment at this time, please come to the desk.
Can I just clarify?
Yeah. Councilor Dolan.
So for the future, what you see on the agenda as public hearing, that is for anything that we're deliberating about that requires a public hearing by law. And that's kind of a placeholder on the agenda. Just because it says public hearing does not mean that there is one necessarily. It depends night to night. So public comment is the label that we use for kind of open public comment on any issue. So just for the future.
Yeah.
And I know it's confusing.
Thanks, Mark. And just to clarify, for the process, so please state your name and address, and we have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you. My name is Ginger Carson. I live on Fair Road. I am a member of the Council on Aging, and I understand that the budget for the Council on Aging is part of tonight's meeting. Is that correct?
Yes.
I also have heard that there is the possibility of cutting the budget for the Council on Aging as part of your deliberations. And I would like to make a couple of statements about why we all feel very strongly that that would not be a very good thing. We are sitting here in the John Zahn Community Center, which is really the Greenfield Senior Center. It was named the Community Center during deliberations for the budget to approve the senior center. It was designed as a senior center and has been operating as a senior center. And due to the grace of the employees here, Hope McCary and her staff, they have also very gracefully started to schedule, reschedule, fix community events that take place here during their own working hours when they do not, to begin with, have enough staff. Even when we were on Weldon Street, we didn't have enough staff. Now we have the equivalent of, what, 2.3?
Yep.
And it's called a 3.8 full-time equivalent staff, but one of those staff people is paid for by a grant. So that's a 1.5 FTE shortfall. When we moved into this building, we had an enormous increase in usage of this building by the seniors, and seniors make up 25% of this town. So I think it's important to keep in mind while you're deliberating the budget for the senior center that the staff is now doing things that were never in their job descriptions. There seems to be no one else in town who can do those things. And it is an incredible burden on an already burdened staff. And I would just like that taken into consideration. This Hope McCary is gracefully taking over those jobs, but they're not really hers.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Hazel Dawkins, and I live in Greenfield. I'm a senior and a member of the COA. Did you know that the programs have more than doubled since the Greenfield Senior Center moved to this new building? Membership has increased greatly, but a major number of people who are not members come to the center for programs, so this increase in people using the building is not counted, per se. The Greenfield Center has 3 full-time staff and only 1 part-time staff, which is considered 3.8 full-time equivalents. The city pays only for 2.3 full-time staff. This means that in addition to everything else, the COA director, Hope McCary, has to write grants to cover the shortfall. To date, the John Zahn Community Center does not have any budget, and it does not have any staff. Naturally, the Greenfield Senior Center focuses on seniors, because the charter says the COA has management of the senior center. Our charter does not mention a community center. There's no budget, no staff for a community center. Think about it. You can't change the name of a building and expect the mission of the senior center to change. However, the staff does work to incorporate more community center programs, as well as caring about youth and all-age programs. There are limits to what can be accomplished with the current budget that funds 2.3 full-time staff. An increase in funding would benefit all from seniors to other people who use the JZ Center. The small staff at the Senior Center do offer many programs which benefit the whole community. Many of these are multi-age friendly, like the GHS Student Seniors Walking Group, Books and Bagels reading program with students and seniors, and the Mixed Age Dance Performance Group, Seniority. Many of these are open to the public programs and are for all ages, no need to be a member. My personal experience for almost a decade has been that each woman who is part of the very small staff works incredibly hard and does a marvelous job of creating a welcoming place that offers a multitude of excellent programs. And just as a small point, I heard that there was concern over asking big brothers, big sisters to leave. The update is there were safety concerns, talks are going on, and there's a desire and willingness to make it work. Thank you.
Thank you, Hazel. I wanted to note for the record that Councillor Mass is here. Welcome. We will continue public comment this time. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Seeing none. Thank you, Kathy. We will move on in the agenda to operating and capital budget discussion. And I'm going to go slightly out of order for the benefit of the departments whose directors are present. So at this time, I'd like to invite up Hope McCary from the Director of the Council on Aging. And for those of you with your budget books, I believe they're on page 121.
Hello.
Hello.
How do you like your new digs? It's nice, huh?
I love them.
Cool mics.
Nice. The mics could be a little bit longer. That's my only complaint. Whole building, only complaint.
Yeah, no, it's true. You got to lean in.
Would you like to give us a sort of statement about how the last year has been and anything else?
So it's been quite a year in our new facility. It's been really interesting to grow into it as a department. You know, we were in our basement and now we're in this beautiful state-of-the-art facility. So we spent a lot of times just sort of you know, scaling up our operations, policies, procedures. You know, we operate a little bit differently here than we did in our sort of mom and pop senior center that was over at the Weldon. Our volunteers have made amazing progress in ramping up the front desk operations to address that. We have a new group of volunteers called Operations Support Team, and they are really they bridge the front of the house operations, which is our front desk volunteers, with the back, with the administrative. So they're performing really high level. Some of those are senior tax work-off volunteers, not all of them. We've doubled the number of programs, as I think Hazel or Ginger mentioned. And we've embarked on several new partnerships as well. We have about 25 different community partnerships with agencies. That doesn't count individuals, but we have quite a few agency and organizational partnerships. I'm not going to give you the whole list, but yeah, we're grateful to be here, and we are excited to see what the next year brings.
Thank you. Do counselors have questions for Hope at this time? Councilor Mass.
Your budget is showing on page 20, on page 21, permanent salary and wages, an 8% increase. Can you discuss what that's attributable to?
So I think you're probably having a lot of similar conversations with other departments. There were contracts that got settled in the last few months, and so those numbers reflect contractual obligations.
How many years of contracts are covered by that? This is the second or the third year of the contract in the upcoming fiscal year?
I'm not prepared to answer that question. I'm not one of the contract staff. I'm not represented by a union, so I'd have to look that up for you.
So the salary
Counselor.
and wages, are they, I'm sorry.
Counselor, just for the purposes of clarity, order, and decorum, I'd like to remind my fellow committee members that there'll be no cross-examination at this meeting, no steady back and forth. This is a public meeting. It's not a conversation. So I'll ask you to wait to be recognized before speaking, and I will thank you for for your participation. And Counselor, if you would like an answer from the mayor on that question, we can call him up now or later. Counselor Mass.
My question for the department head, is that salary and wages so that's a non-unionized position, or is that more than one position?
There are 4 positions here at the senior center. 3 are full-time, 1 is part-time.
So
The city funds 2.3, as a couple of my board members had said, and the other 1.5, I write grants for. I write about $70,000 worth of grants. We have federal and state grants and some local foundation grants.
Counselor Mass.
So the part-time wages are the ones that are up 8%. And you're saying that's solely contractual increases for a single employee?
There are 4 employees, Councillor Mass.
4. But how many of them, but only 1 is part-time?
That's right, but they're paid part-time by the town, by the city, and that's why they're classified as part-time, so that, in that line item. So the only full-time employee is myself, this position, Senior Center Director.
And if you don't have the information for this, maybe the mayor can come up with his staff to assist you. I'm not clear. The line item that says permanent salary wages part-time, that represents a single employee.
That represents the 3 employees that are paid part-time. Part of their salary is paid by the city. The other part of the salary is paid by grants. That's how accounting classifies those positions.
Very good.
So,
Counselor Mass.
so the full-time salary and wages, that's your position.
That is the Senior Center Director position, yes.
So in part-time wages, we have 3 employees, 1 of which is part-time, 2 of which are full-time, but partially paid for by grants.
Correct.
Have we seen a reduction in those grants
Over what period of time, Councillor Mass?
from last year to this year?
Well, we won't have this year's grant numbers probably until the state's late with those. We didn't get the numbers this year until maybe November.
Are you budgeting for a decrease?
No, I'm budgeting for level funding, but we will not know until the state settles their budget. And what happens, as you all know, once you start the fiscal year and you're spending at a certain level, and then there's a decrease partway through, then you have to make it up.
But you're not budgeting for that currently? You're not anticipating
Budgeting
that?
for level funded for the grants.
And the employees who are part-time or full-time, is the part-time employee, the actual part-time employee unionized?
There are 3 staff here that are part of the SSEA bargaining unit, and 1 staff that is not part of a bargaining unit.
And the member who's not the staff who's not a member of the bargaining unit, that is not you, right? There's another staff member.
The Greenfield Senior Center Director position is not part of a bargaining unit.
Okay. And so are all of the rest of the employees part of a bargaining unit?
Yes, the
Okay.
3 other employees are part of a bargaining unit, the SSEA.
And you don't know what year of their contract they're in?
Yeah, no, I don't. I think they
We'll
just
ask,
started it, but
we'll ask
that's...
for clarification from the mayor's office. Mark Smith.
Yeah, the SSEA contract terms will expire on June 30th, 2020.
So this is for the 3rd year of the contract. Are we anticipating 2 years of retroactive pay for this bargaining unit like DPW?
We've already funded that contract. That contract has already been funded by the council, and basically we closed that contract. It was funded this past year,
So this
calendar year, yep.
This 8% increase is an increase for 3 consecutive years, correct?
Oh, wouldn't that be 2 years?
Is it 2?
Years,
We'll be in the
yeah,
second year,
yeah,
so
yeah,
2
2
years.
years,
So a
yeah.
4% and a 4%, or collectively.
I'd like to point out to counselors at this time who may not have seen it that there is a file in the Google Drive at this time that does list positions, salaries, and bargaining units, or whether or not the positions are unionized. And it's confidential information, but counselors have access to it.
I'm aware of the information, but the public doesn't have access, and I'd like them to understand what's happening. There's two, so this is, what were the terms of that contract? What were the per year increases?
That'll be from memory. I don't have that,
You don't
that
know.
information in front of me.
Can you send that to us?
Yeah.
Do I have questions from other counselors? Counselor Dolan?
This is not necessarily directly related to the budget, but as a counselor, I am very concerned with how this facility is used. And I also know that we're not a town that has the resources to have a facility closed between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m. or whatever the hours are. I was particularly disappointed to learn that the GCC Senior Symposia are no longer hosted here. I think if that's not the kind of thing that this facility was built for, I don't know what would be more appropriate. It's now currently being held, an event for seniors in a room that's not accessible with stairs, in a location that is, barely serviced by public transportation. So are there plans in the works, and I know that this is not all your responsibility, but also falls on the mayor, and thank you for remaining there, Mark. Are there plans afoot to make sure that this building is more intensively used more hours during the day?
Well, you're right, that's not a budget question. I will say with regards to GCC, it wasn't compatible with day-to-day senior center use. So what we typically have is about 100 seniors in and out every day, sometimes more, sometimes less. GCC was about 100 seniors. Now, what it took, though, to do that program was closing the room for a couple of hours prior to the event so that GCC staff could come and set up. And then GCC staff would come later at some point to put it back together again, so that was not a draw on city resources. What we were finding is that we were, yes, serving the 100 or so GCC folks at the expense of our regular day-to-day members, who is about the same number. And GCC charges $10 each for those, and most of our programs are free. So between the parking lot, which has about 66 spaces, the impact on the neighborhood, and trying to have, for example, board meetings co-located at the same time in the building, it was problematic.
Thank you. Counselor Mass.
It was discussed during public comment concern related to Big Brothers Big Sisters, and that is a program that people don't pay to participate in. Can you discuss what the problem was with the Big Brothers Big Sisters program?
Well, again, not a budget question, but that's all right.
I think it is.
Okay.
Related, yeah.
We have lots of partnerships. We have partnerships with all ages. The Big Brothers Big Sisters was a new one this year, and like all new partnerships, we go through bumps trying to work things out. We have spent some time with those folks, and we are trying to figure out a way to make that work here.
You enter agreements with outside groups when they decide to use the facility, or they make arrangements to use the facility?
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
You enter any kind of memorandum of understanding or an agreement or a contract with anyone who uses the facility? So if I come in and I say, hey, I'd like to use the Johnson Community Center for a program, how does that work? How do I actually do that?
It depends. So in this particular case, though, is what you're asking about,
No,
right?
I mean anybody, any group that wants to
You know
come in
what?
and use it, how do they use it?
I'm here to talk about the budget, Counselor Mass.
Well, the budget includes repairs and maintenance to the building, correct? $500.
$500.
And that is based on how many people use the building, correct? There's wear and tear based on how many people use the building, correct?
Keep going.
So I consider, that a factor. And in fact, whether or not, we also pay to heat this building, we pay to light this building, we pay to plow this building. And the programming that takes place in the building is a factor in how often those things need to be used. So my question is about programming. My question is, if I want to set up a program, what is the policy and procedure to do that?
Well, if it's a one-time program versus a series, if you're charging for it, if you're not charging for it, if you are a for-profit versus a business entity versus an individual. So it really varies.
Do you have a set of policies and procedures that are in place?
For after hours or for during the day?
Both.
We have for during the day, it depends on the case. So for example, Big Y came in today and did a table. Did I have a contract or an MOU with them? No, we talked on the phone, we set the schedule, they came in, they raffled off a gift basket, and there was no official agreement.
So but other people you do have to you require an agreement?
We have an agreement with Big Brothers Big Sisters. I think that's what you're getting to, yes?
No, what I'm trying to find out is, are there a set of policies and procedures that anyone can pick up to find out how to use this facility?
Not at this time. Under development, but no.
How long has this facility been open?
You know the answer to that, about a year.
About a year. So how long does it take to put that set of procedures together so that we can be ensured that people aren't being treated differently?
I guess it takes more than a year, Counselor Mass.
Well, when do you project it will be done?
I do not have an answer for that.
Do you think if we cut the full-time permanent salary and wages, we might be able to get it done?
I think
I'm
that
sorry.
question's out of line.
So do I.
Counselors, please, let's try to be respectful at this time.
And let me just add, thank you, Mayor.
Yes. Director Smith?
I just want to say, in terms of the facility use policy, we actually have something that's been drafted, but currently it's in review with an attorney to make sure everything is correct. Again, as we said the last time I was here, I reviewed it, but I make sure I can only go so far to ensure that there is no exposed liability for for-profit groups that use the facility.
So there's a complete draft currently.
Mayor Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilor Mass, first let me address the time the building has been turned over to the city and the time that the warranties go through the process. So we're closing in on a year of the warranties, and there's still some work to be done. It's about 99.2% complete, and there's still project manager obligations here. So he's coming in, and there's been schedule set to finish about 3 or 4 items. Immediately, we set up an informal policy where any governmental group would work through HOPE to schedule and use the property, the gallery, this room here, or the other small rooms, during a certain period of time. And so we've kind of bumped programs sometimes to bring in a government group. All other external groups from the community go to the mayor's office, and we coordinate if it can be something that can be fit into any type of evening schedule. So, for instance, we've locked in the city council, we locked in school committee, locked in a couple of veterans groups, but we don't have the staff, we don't have the schedule set up for a custodian into the evenings, and that was an issue of money when we were at the high school. So we haven't solved that here. We had the task force that was led by Councilor Mark Maloney, and we've got all that information except for fees, and we haven't come to an agreement on fees. I'm not for any fees, and there's still an expense and a schedule to coordinate for anybody using the building between, say, 6 and 10.
Councilor Mass?
Mayor, my concern is not what the policy is, but that there's an equitable policy and all people are treated the same based on what class or use that they're using, and that it be done in a reasonable amount of time. Do you have any projections on when do you believe it will be done before your term of office is completed?
I would hope so. I would hope we'd be done by the end of August. Just one follow-up to a previous question on the SSEA. The SSEA contract was in effect now from July 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2020. And so that's a union bargaining unit for the three employees here. Their contract terms are 222, so it's 2% each year.
So what I don't understand is if it is, I'm sorry.
Councilman.
If it's a 2, 2, and 2, how are we at an 8% increase in year 2?
Okay, so I don't have that.
I know it's a 2% over the 2% increase, but that seems high.
I think we'll call Director Gilman up to the floor. If
Maybe my math
there's a chance
is
she
wrong.
can address this.
And then so we add also, that contract was ratified and funded by the council on 12/19/2018.
Thank you.
I would just add that there would be a step as well, and most of the steps
step,
are
thank you.
2%.
Thank you, Director
That
Gilman.
answers my question.
Okay.
All right. Any more questions on the Council of Aging budget while we have Director McCary here? Councilor Mass.
Am I correct that this department is administering the senior and veteran work-off program?
That is incorrect.
Do you know which department does?
The Veterans does the Veterans Tax Work-Off,
Okay. And you,
and the Senior Center directly administers the Senior Tax Work-Off. We do it in conjunction and collaboration with all of the other departments involved. So we have meetings that include assessors, accounting, HR, the mayor's office. I'm missing someone, but to coordinate all aspects of the program.
and how many slots do you have currently for seniors in the senior work-off program?
Well, that's under discussion right now.
Well, how many did you have last year?
Last year, we had 19.
How many of those 19 worked in departments outside of this department?
Again, I'm here to answer budget questions, so you're throwing me some details, but I'm going to say that assessors, DPW, planning, recreation, library, I might be missing some. Some are here and some are about town.
Do you have a ballpark of what percentage are in your department?
No.
Can you get us that accounting, please? Of which departments the individuals are in? I don't need the names, just how many in each department.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I think that's all. Councilor Dolan.
I think this is more of a comment, and this is me planning into the future. As councilors, we are charged with stewarding the resources of the town, and one of the most frequent complaints I get is about this facility not being available or being somehow underutilized. Some of that, I'm sure, is exaggeration, but it does raise concerns when I hear things about
Oh, no, we get those too.
Big Brothers, Big
We do.
Sisters, and
Well, we have
and
Big Brothers.
GCC.
We have a partnership with Big Brothers, Big Sisters, currently.
If I may. So it's definitely something, this is the finest facility in town in many ways. It's the most up-to-date, it's the most accessible, it's one of the most centrally located. So moving forward, it's a priority of mine to see it utilized by as many people as possible. I don't think that it's entirely fair for all of the taxpayers in this town to be funding a facility that's only used by 100 seniors a day. As important as that is, it's extremely important. But if we're just a community that's in a position that needs to be maximizing the use of all of the resources, and this is a really important one. So going forward, I am definitely going to be watching how the facility is used. And I don't have any desire to cut anybody's budget, but I think if the Council on Aging is not able to manage the facility in a way that allows other groups to use it, then we may have to look at some point into sharing the facility with another department in order to do that. But this is a very important facility. It's a very serious issue. I really want other groups to have access to it.
Can I respond?
You may.
I totally agree with you, and I hear those comments, and my front desk volunteers hear those comments, and it's a frustration for all of us. We all share that. It is a beautiful building, and it should be used more. We are a small staff. We have 4,000 seniors in town, and we serve about half of those. Now, in terms of market penetration, that's about 50%. Most senior centers across the network are about 40%. So we are serving more than the average. We don't aim to be average. We want to be above average. But our charge, our department is the Council on Aging. And the Council on Aging, according to the charter, has charge of the senior center. Now, we're delighted that there's a community center, but where are the resources to expand our operations to do that? So my staff is Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. So how does the after-hours building management happen? These are the conversations that we're having. Who's going to pay for the custodial? Would the custodian be present? All of those things. So what I have done, and I feel like I've done a good job, have made it possible for city departments, boards, committees, and commissions to have as much access to this building as possible. That includes after hours, and that includes during the day when there is a need. Now, expanding a small department to add more tasks to an already overstretched department, I hear your frustration, but how exactly would we do that? Would we pull staff from the daytime and have them work evenings? Would we close a couple days during the week so that we could be open on weekends? It's tricky. I would just close by saying that I think that we didn't do the best job as a community with this community center because it was planned as a senior center. And at the very last minute, the label community center and the name John's on, and I loved John, we were friends. But you can't change the function of a department just by changing the name of the building. There's structure in place. It's gonna take some time to do that. That's not an instant, oh, we have a community center and, all right, now we're a community center.
Thank you, Director McCary. Councilor Mass?
This is not a question, but a comment. I concur 100% and fully with Councilor Dolan. A building is not a department. A building is a facility that a department has stewardship of or uses. And I've heard that same excuse when we built a new high school. It was going to be available to the entire community to use this brand new facility, and it didn't happen. The transportation center, which was a state building, there's going to be plenty of room for public meetings. The police station, which we are now about to build, thinking about building a new one, there was a community room for people to meet in. When we looked at bringing a marijuana distributorship into Greenfield, there was going to be a community room for veterans to meet in, and that fell off the plan. Time after time, facilities are sold with the mission and the hope that people are going to be able to use the facility for community events broadly. And it is not incumbent just on the Council on Aging and the Senior Center to facilitate that. But it is incumbent on them, when they have the primary stewardship, to work with other departments to facilitate that and to ensure that the building is available. And that's not just for you, that's also for the school department, for our many schools. It's for our police department. They took over our community room for a roll call room. That all of these buildings do not belong to individual departments. There are not fiefdoms, and we need to break down the walls and start communicating with each other so that we, meaning we, the community as a whole, gets the most access and the most use out of all these buildings, because it's measures like this that are going to prevent people who have heard it again and again for voting for a library that is being sold on the idea of community access.
Thank you, Councillor Mass. I'd like to add, before letting Councillor Dolan speak, that from my perspective, another way to look at this is that we as councillors and as government officials need to figure out a solution to this. That's the thing, because the demand is clearly there. And if there's no funding and no staffing, which it doesn't seem like there is, I completely concur that it doesn't seem possible with the way things are set up to open the facility to everyone who wants to use it, then what I would like to see as a councillor is a proposal at some point of what would make it possible. So if this is a problem that everyone's banging their head against the wall around, then I would like to see in the budget $20,000 for a part-time custodian to open it. And we might shoot it down, but then we as counselors would be able to take some ownership of the decision. Director Gilman, would you like to contribute?
I was going to add one other thought.
Please.
Part of the Municipal Modernization Act allowed municipalities to have a revolving building rental account upon acceptance, which the school departments have. Yes, you would be charging probably certain organizations fees, but that could be a source for paying someone, a custodian or whomever, for meetings or events that take place here. So it's another possibility.
Thank you. Yeah, I didn't realize that. That's good to know. Councillor Dolan?
I just wanted to clarify, I'm not here to rake anybody over the coals, and I understand, obviously, that Director McCary, you're doing what you can with the staff that you have. Like, I don't see this as a Council on Aging responsibility. I see this as a responsibility that's shared by the entirety of the executive branch. So I would second what Councillor Wheeler said. I would really like to see a proposal for how we can maximize this. Even if this was called a senior center, even if it was the property of the Council on Aging, I would still expect, as a public building, for it to be open for community groups when not in use. That is an expectation that I share of every taxpayer-funded space. So I would really like to see that. I would also, after watching the seniors a few weeks ago climbing the stairs in the Stinchfield Lecture Hall at GCC, my first request would be that we bring those senior symposia back here. I think this is the space that makes the most sense, and I'm sure that a solution can be found.
Thank you, Councillor Dolan. Thank you, Director McCary. I think we're going to move on at this time. Thanks. So I'm actually going to call up Carol Collins from the Energy Department. And that is page 81 on your budget books, I believe.
Thank you.
Hi, Carol.
Hi. So I know it didn't get to you till this morning, so I did bring handouts. I have some pretty information.
I believe. Thank you.
Thank you.
What page are we on? I'm sorry. Maybe
82.
81.
It starts in 82, on 81.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, until the light turns green.
There you go.
So obviously, we have your narrative, and thank you for that, but would you like to give any sort of statement about how things are going in the energy department?
So fast, I can't, my head spins most days, but, I appreciate the opportunity to come here and just, answer any questions. And what I did do was try to pull out the main reasons for the increase in the budget, which have to do with the new buildings that have been built, which is great and fabulous. And then also a contract that was added to my budget from the central maintenance related to the Siemens energy savings contract that was done some years back. And the goal is to actually reduce that cost. So the way I look at the budget is when I'm setting it up in, for instance, this winter for 2020, I have to rely on the numbers that I have from FY18. And I've only gotten one heating bill so far, so it's kind of a crystal ball act. But I do challenge myself to try to keep within $500 on the smaller accounts below, say 5,000, and within 1,000 on the rest. So, because I'm a geek, that's what I do, and that's why you'll see a lot of fluctuations, because I try to tighten it up every year. So I've spent a lot of hours making sure that I cut things as close as I could without being too optimistic and leaving problems to arise later. So this is, like science, the best information I had available at the time to try to predict what would be necessary in FY 2020. So again, on the front of this handout just explains where this large, or the most of the bulk of the increase from FY19 comes from. And then if you turn over to the back, it just discusses, just to give you a snapshot, some of the projects that we've been working on. The total of 11 projects that have been completed or are in process from the 10-month period of December of 2018 through September of this year. So only included are things that are actually on their way or have been completed. And again, with estimates of what we expect to save or what we've seen so far. And then just a few at the end of that page discussing kind of some bigger picture items of totals of sums that have been brought in and saved over the course of the 5-year Energy Department existence. So any questions, or if there's anything else you want to know, please.
Yeah, thank you, Carol. It's great to see a department that saves money. It's, it probably will make the questions easier, but I have one about, is solar coming to the roof of this building? Is that
That's
in the
plan.
works?
There's an application, and everything's on hold in Massachusetts, unfortunately, because the program filled up on the first day after we waited for 2 years for it to open up. So there's still a big demand. Utilities don't like it, so it's we were told by spring we should know, and I always add on like 3 months. So I think, did I put in fall? Yeah, I put in September. So hopefully we'll have some news by then. But that would be fabulous.
Yeah, I would assume that there's some hope that once those got up there, that the cost, which was a little higher than we expected, would go way down.
Yeah, as Hope mentioned, there's, commissioning the building and occupying it, there's been some tweaking, so that's all trying to take into account. So if I had to do it today, I'd probably cut from 22,000 down to 20, but again.
I mean, don't throw that out fast and loose. I mean, we're counting every dollar up here. Councilor Mass?
Let me start on your format. The 8 electrical charging stations at the new parking garage, do you know how often they're being used?
I do, actually. I'm going to blow you away. 192 charges since December, because we just did that right before I came over.
Thank you. I have more questions.
Councilor Mass.
Your department has 1 full-time employee and 1 part-time employee?
I'm the full-time employee, and then I have Lori DiDonato, and we work like whirling dervishes.
Part-time. And that part-time employee was there for the full year last year and is anticipated for the full year this time?
Yeah, 3 days.
I do have questions about the full-time salary and wages, but those are more appropriate for the mayor. I'd ask the chairman
Okay.
for the mayor to come forward at this time.
Sure. Mayor Martin, would you? And I'm sorry, who else did you request?
Whoever he wants.
And either Director Gilman or Director Smith.
This way. Yes, sir.
Mayor Martin, the full-time employee in this department is a non-unionized position, correct?
Yes.
I'm showing a 10.2% increase in salary and wages for that one position. Can you explain why we're getting a 10.2% increase this year in this department for a single employee?
So a couple of reasons, actually. The NR, as they're called, non-represented, there's about 22, 24 of them, I think, are employees that are representing themselves, and they report directly to the mayor. Each employee has a specific job, specific responsibility. In this particular case, Carol is our energy director, but she's also a county expert and probably beyond Franklin County an expert. So she is entitled to increases in pay. So we do that in two ways. We do it on a merit basis for accomplishment, meeting goals, and so on. And we also do it for a combination of, in lieu of a final pay equity survey, I've been using the NRs to compare at the local level on all the departments in town, including the schools.
Councilor Mass.
Well, I certainly have been asking for a pay equity study for quite some time, and that might give me the rationale for why we were doing this, but I haven't seen that.
I believe, am I correct that the pay equity, and I haven't gone through it all, but there's pay equity information in the Google Drive.
Okay, well, there's a lot of stuff in the Google Drive. Can you send that separately by email or written?
The reason we put everything in the Google Drive to give every counselor equal access. We have duplicated that by printing because we do realize some counselors don't go on the computer or don't go to Google Drive. So we're trying to supplement the electronic access free and clear for everyone with some printed material.
I understand
It saves us a lot of time.
How many pages is the pay equity study?
It's not a pay equity study. It's our attorney's report on the pay equity study. So it'll explain to you why it takes the entire Commonwealth a long time to put this together.
So who completed the pay equity study of Greenfield?
SHQ.
Okay. So there's municipal council.
Yes.
And there's a report specifically as to this department in that report?
Actually, it was your question, I think, maybe a month ago that caused us to search out that legal opinion, and actually not a legal opinion, a survey explaining the law and where they are now for the city of Greenfield.
And it addressed this department?
No.
It didn't address this position?
No. That isn't complete yet. That's part of the survey.
Am I correct in that it informed your how the city is moving forward in terms of adjusting pay scales?
Exactly. And where we are with the rest of the Commonwealth cities and towns.
Very good. Councilor Mass.
What other positions have you adjusted based on that study?
I can't give you that answer off the top of my head.
Can you give it to us in writing? Can you look it up and get us a response?
Well, let me just see. So we got 24. I'd have to take those 24 in our contracts, go through each one of them, go through the employee folder, and decide what we use for a comparable position or in-house or in the other departments. In-house, I mean city. Other departments, I mean the school. So I can do it when I get the time to do it.
Councilor Mass.
So are you saying you don't know which positions you looked at that were addressed in the pay as a result of the pay equity study? You don't know which ones?
I think that's a really cruel, unfair question to ask me and statement to imply that I don't know the
I'm just
contracts
asking
that
the
I signed. So let me be clear for you. So say our GTD director, Greenfield Technology Department, is running a department and a whole city with in IT, doing the network and doing a dozen other things. He deserves equal pay for anyone else in the city of Greenfield doing the same type of thing, and maybe even a lesser responsibility. So I would use those two people in town, maybe three, and see where their salaries are and try to equalize so that we don't get sued in the future with in our contracts that I'm compelled to sign, or we don't have a technology department. Is that clear?
No.
I'm unfortunate.
Mayor, let me step back and ask a couple other questions if I can. Is there any other employee in town who received a 10.2% increase this year?
I can't give you that answer. I'll look at what all of the employees' salaries are on at your request or Councilor Alice's request are on the G Drive. You can go through each one of them, see what they got last year, see what they got this year, and find out if they got a 2%, a 1%, a 0%, or 10%.
Well, I think it was at Chairman Wheeler's request, but
I requested the information for the benefit of all councilors, but yes, it was at my request.
I would like to know what the next closest increase is. Just the next closest. I don't need to know across the board, but it matters to me if the top increase is, a 4 or 6% increase from year to year. And I'm not talking multiple years tacked together. And then someone else gets a 10% increase, it raises questions. There may be good answers. The pay equity may be exactly the correct answer for that. But I am concerned that it appears from your explanation that this was not done in a comprehensive way, looking at pay equity issues across the town all at the same time, but haphazardly as different contracts came up, and there was not an effort to ameliorate pay equity issues all at the same time at the earliest possible opportunity. Now, that may be incorrect, but I really do not understand what we've done, and I've been asking about this question for about a year. I will take a look at the legal opinion, and I will take a look at you have what was the second piece that you sent us? You sent us the legal opinion, and what was the other item that you sent us?
I'm not sure if you're referring to the salary and
wages of all the
there was a
city employees.
There's a pay equity report that was prepared by who?
Sullivan Hayes Quinn.
And then there was something that you did, there was a supplemental piece of information after that?
I didn't mention that.
Okay, so that is all we have, is just the Sullivan Hayes.
That's not all you have. You have quite a few of the documents in there. I hope the councilors take the time to look at them. But let me comment on your observation on how we developed the contracts. It's totally inaccurate. Your observation is way off base, and your insinuation is ridiculous. So as I gave you the example of technology director for the city of Greenfield and the technology director for the high school, the school department, there have to be comparable traits, skills, experience, knowledge, and application. So that's how we do similar type of NR contracts. Another example might be the business manager for the school department and the finance director or director of municipal finance for the city. Similar types of skills, knowledge, experience, degrees, certifications, and so on. Those have to be accurate. You can't have one making enormously more than the other and still compete with the marketplace.
Councilor Wheeler.
Councilor Mass.
Mayor, I understand the concept. That's why I've been asking about it for a year. What I don't understand is how there's not a comprehensive report of all of the actions you took as a result of the pay equity study.
Okay, so again, maybe I'm not being clear. So you're inaccurate. The study is not complete. The study is in process, and that's the report that's on the G drive or the counselor's drive of what they've been doing since the law went into effect or since the final regulations came down for the law. So we don't have any studies saying this counselor Mass gets $2,000 and this counselor Dolan gets $4,000. We don't have anything like that. They're doing the survey as it's quite complicated. So read the legal report. You have to, by law, determine what a position is, and then find a comparable position, and then start building a equality in the hiring, regardless of the person holding the position. So we don't have that. I know you've been asking for a while, since just like you've been asking about the MVP. It takes a while for us to get into it. Sometimes we're first, sometimes we're second, sometimes we're last, but we eventually will get to it. We only have so many people doing really wonderful things in the city. So we're moving on that. So I just want to say that your recent request, I think 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, to deal with every department over 2%, put 3 or 4 people into motion to get that answer for you and put it all together and get all the documentation, the backup, and so on. A simple question can run 4 or 5 people to do a job, and we're doing a lot of jobs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand that there's maybe a difference of opinion here in terms of whether everything, maybe in a perfect world, we would address all of them all at once, but obviously we're not in a perfect world, and we do what we can with the resources that we're given. I'd ask the councilors please read the reports before furthering this line of questioning, and I'd like to take questions for Ms. Collins at this time to further the discussion around the Energy Department budget.
I have further questions for the mayor.
If they are about a subject other than the Pay Equity Act, I'll allow them.
Well, they're about this particular line item 01001970.5111, permanent salary and wages for the full-time employee.
I'll allow it.
Mayor, you indicated that you used this incomplete report as a factor in raising this salary by 10.2%. You also indicated that the report did not yet address this department. So what part of the report did you use to raise that, what did you rely on to reach that?
Mayor, if I may, I don't believe that question. I'm not going to take that question at this time. I think that if the Pay Equity Act implied through any insight that it may have given that there was reason to raise a employee's salary, then it would be incumbent upon the city to act upon this. I would think that it would put the city at risk of being sued to not act upon this insight. And so, Councillor Mass, if you would like to repeat the question, I will allow it.
President Wheeler, the purpose of a study, so I can help my colleagues, is specifically, it's an affirmative defense to being for an action to be brought against you. That meaning that if an action is brought against you and you've done a study and you've taken action based on that study, then you can raise that as a defense in litigation. And so that's one of the reasons why I've actively been for a study being done and action being taken. But my concern, what I'm trying to get at here, is the mayor is using that as a rationale for the increase in this position, but he's also saying that the report is incomplete and that the report did not address this position. So I don't understand how he used this issue unless he just determined on his own that there was pay equity outside of problems, outside of any report or study. And if that's true, I'd like to understand how that came to happen so that we have a full understanding of where we got where we are, because a 10% increase is a substantial increase. And again, these questions I'm trying to direct to the mayor because I don't think they bear on the employees should try to get all they can get.
I do appreciate that, and thank you for clarifying your question, Councilor Mass. Would you like to address it, Mayor?
Sure, but I do want to be clear that there is no report. So you're saying, what report did I use? The report has not been published. It has not been delivered to the city. So the study continues with the attorneys working with the Pay Equity Act. We've been discussing the Pay Equity Act in the executive with the attorney and internally since before it was passed, when it was a bill. So we've been aware of this for quite a while. We're also quite aware of the inequities that exist in the city of Greenfield. I believe I mentioned to you 2 years ago that the pay equity is going to have an impact on the city budget. And we only control pretty much 55% of the budget. So let me, to answer the question. Again, it's based on, to answer that specific question, I have to speak about that specific position.
I understand.
Okay, so the position is very complex. You're dealing with a number of different people at high levels of government, lower levels of government, including construction workers and vendors and panel installers. The science of panels and solar. There's enormous amount of research and knowledge that the person has to have in that position to communicate with the people that we have to deal with to do solar. Carol has done a remarkable job. She's looked at by a number of groups across the state as a leader, knowledgeable in a number of different areas. She's very well versed in Solar 1, Solar 2, the SREX, the SMART program. She's on top of it all, including solar storage, which is, the state is trying to move on, but they keep stumbling. She has the ability to draft documents that are meet legal review. We just finished one on the Millbrook well. It took about 3 or 4 weeks of transferring information back and forth. It's going to be developed by a number of attorneys now in California that will then present our document for the Millbrook well. So, and then we'll be bringing it to the council for approval. It's another one of the solar documents, 20 years plus 30, plus 10 rather, to get to 30. So all that has to do with, it all comes out of Carol's office. And I don't know, at one point, you might have 1.6 people in that office. What's also very important is that she monitors everything that's happening with energy-wise in Greenfield. She was a major part of our conversion from oil to natural gas. At the time, it was a great idea, and we saved a lot of money over the years. Our cheapest fuel now is electricity and oil, and Carol has been moving all of our buildings to that particular fuel. With the Millbrook well coming on, it's going to satisfy at least the extra electricity needed for the anaerobic digester, and probably eat into some of the existing electricity needed now at the treatment plant. So, in short, it's her special skills of communication, science, and experience in this over the years. But I think what's really important is that indescribable, she has it in the ballet to get to I love solar, I like renewable, and she really enjoys it. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. If I may ask you to summarize that in two words, would you say that the raise is based in merit and performance, and would you say that it makes the city's compensation of the position more equitable?
I would say all of that, and just say that actually I think over the years her salary's been saved by virtue of her actions for working for the city.
Thank you, Mayor. Other questions from councilors? Councilor Dolan.
I'd just like to recognize the work that Director Collins does and the special skills that she brings to the position, and also recognize that those skills are in demand by municipalities, by industry, and even at the higher rate of pay, I would say we are getting a bargain considering how much value you're bringing to the town.
Councilor Mass.
So I have, first of all, let me say, as my colleagues did, I have no questions about the director's competency or expertise, none at all. I think we all agree with that. And if the answer was this was a merit-based raise, I might disagree with that on policy basis, but I would understand it. What I don't understand is the mayor went through a litany of special skills that this employee has. Can you tell me what other positions you compared this position to?
Yeah, so there's a couple actually in our conversations with Carol, some in town, some out of town. So similar type of positions are rare in several municipalities. I think Northampton is the closest.
Oh, Amherst and Northampton out here.
All right, why don't you speak to what we've spoken about so many times about keeping the girl in Greenfield?
Well, I would just say that I think that this discussion winds up being a coincidental one. This past spring was the first time since I had been working for the town that the NR staff had the opportunity to enter into a 3-year contract with the mayor. So in preparation for that, which I believe was before the pay equity study was on the docket, I prepared, and there was a review, the mayor and I went through that, and so there was a whole process that we followed that was separate from, I would say, the pay equity study, and that's how this came about. So I don't know if that clarifies anything, but also it was reviewing different positions that are in the NR and what is known about the skills involved with those and comparing how those aligned and trying to make that better, as you said, equitable.
Yeah, and I would point out that when you have the chance to look at and compare the NR contracts, I would say this is an incredibly reasonable one. Councilor Mass.
I appreciate that. That's a different answer than the mayor gave. And again, we can have a discussion on whether or not that's appropriate. There's certainly competitive reasons to try to keep an employee in a position, and we can all talk about that. Mayor, but what I am hearing, and I'm a little concerned about, is the non-represented employees tend to be, those are all management personnel?
Pretty much.
And am I correct? What I just heard is that historically you have not signed them to 3-year contracts, but this year, on the year that you're leaving office, you're signing them all to 3-year contracts. Is that correct?
That's pretty accurate.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions for Ms. Collins? Let me see if I had any more. 2 really brief questions about your budget here. The meters cost, the $5,500 at the DPW office building, am I right in assuming that's probably a one-time cost, or is that a new yearly cost?
So that's, again, because it was a new building,
Yeah.
it's just a guesstimate of what we expect the annual bill to be. It's an all-electric building. It's highly efficient, and the only thing that's different about it than would be normal is that there's a second meter that was installed for the IT servers, which are still getting set up. So we don't have, we're still learning what that impact is going to be. So at the end of the year, once I have the data, I'll be able to fine-tune that and hope I'm within 100.
All right. Thanks, Councilor Dolan.
I just had a quick question about Green River School. I know there's talk about putting an alternative high school program in there. If for some reason that program doesn't work out or doesn't have enrollment, is there a plan to kind of winterize that so that $20,000 can be saved?
Well, first of all, the heating system hasn't worked. It's been dismantled. It doesn't function. So it's been winterized this past winter, so that costs quite a bit. And yeah, we'll continue until it's occupied.
Yeah, so basically until there is a
There's a
program
solution,
in there,
yeah. Yep.
those costs will be basically zero.
Councilor Mass?
Mr. Mayor, this is a unique situation related to the non-representative employees. When unions are contracted for 3 years, typically the policy has been to send that contract to the council for approval, so that the council is not locked into the subsequent years if we disapprove of the increases. And that's particularly important when you're talking about management, because it's a single position. Are you anticipating sending these NRE contract 3-year contracts to the council for approval?
They're available. They're public information, actually. We can put those on the website as well, or in the blog. The mayor is authorized to enter into 3-year contracts, as you know. And from what I've heard, your discussion of a couple of weeks ago is that you declared that these contracts were no good if you didn't fund them. So that's true. If you don't want to fund fire chief, police chief, DPW director, sustainability and energy director, I mean, we have 24 of those key city management positions, then, I mean, I hope you have a backup plan to go along with it. I do want to say that the 3-year contract is unique in a way, in that we set the scale hopefully somewhere in the unobservable, inequitable range, so that it's going to be all right. And the second year was a negotiated cost of living increase, quite reasonable compared to what might be happening. And the third year was to be determined. So the purpose of that was to allow the next mayoral administration to come in, have some people who know what's going on in their departments, and they will already be in their second year. Their performance in the first year and second year will be on display for the new mayor, who then can determine whether their contract is renewed as a higher cost of living increase, or the same, or may want to look for somebody else in that position. So it was all set up to allow an easy transition for the next mayoral administration and to control that third year for the next mayor.
Thank you for clarifying. Councilor Mass?
So I think the answer is no, that you're not sending them to the council for approval. You're going to make them available for us to review, but you're not sending them for approval. I'm not saying that we need to. I'm just trying to understand, because we've never had this happen before.
Well, we've always had, I think, in our contracts that were more than 1 year. I mean, quite exemplified by the fact that we have people retiring after 24, 28, 26 years. So those contracts, whether they were ever renewed before, I have no idea, going back in a decade or so. But I know we've had people here in a long time on a similar contract. What I have added in this new contract is an evaluation. We've never had an evaluation of our employees before by the CEO or by the HR. So I've incorporated that in the new NR contract. So part of that second year is a display to the next mayor what the promise was in the first year and how they attained or got to that goal during their second year. And that's kind of like the self-performance schedule and measure that the next mayor will be able to look at.
Thank you. Councilor Mass?
So again, the answer is no, it's not coming to the council for
Well, I'll give you a one-word answer. What's your question?
Are you sending it to the council for approval?
No.
Thank you.
I'm sending it to the council.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Mayo?
Hi. I'm hoping this will be a little bit easier. I'm going to move down to a line where it says, it's on actually page 83. It says contract services. Could you tell me what that is?
So contract services, that is what's listed on the front of the handout. There's a contract that has been in central maintenance to pay for, we use Siemens energy services to upgrade all the buildings. So that's been transferred to my account since that more closely aligns with the energy tracking and monitoring that we do.
Okay.
And then,
Yeah.
yeah,
All right, thank you.
sure. I'm gonna try to get rid of it too.
Excellent. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Mayor.
you.
You're out of the hot seat, but we appreciate it. This is a process, everyone, and it's worth asking the questions, and I do appreciate that. And next up, I think since we were talking about technology, I'll call Director Fernando Fleury to the floor. And technology is on page 68.
Where?
68.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. So, as with everyone, I'd invite you to give us just an opening statement of where things are at in the technology department. And
Well, basically, like every department, we're busy. As the needs for every department increase, so does the needs for my department. It seems like every year they just keep getting, the needs are more and more. Just wanted to keep it short, and I'm ready to answer any questions that you might have.
okay, you're in a unique position because some of the things before us are technology department.
Sorry about the gooseneck.
That's all right. My field too. I'll ask a couple of straightforward questions. The software maintenance line item has been going up for the past couple of years. Could you just speak to actually what is that? Is that in-house software, or what does that mean exactly?
No, basically when I first got here 4 years ago, the IT services for the city were pretty much decentralized. So every year I take a little bit more and more, manage it, try to come up with savings, and that's why you've seen over the years that I'm returning some money back to the city, and just managing it. For example, the second year I was here, I took over the cell phones. We just turned down $16,000 a year just on cell phone costs, just by being able to manage it instead. So basically, it's hard to show here because some of those savings were in other departments. I brought them here, and it seems like it stays about the same in my department.
Got it. Councilor Dolan.
So following up on that increase in software maintenance is largely things moving in from other departments.
Right.
Those were licenses that we had arrangements for.
Right.
You're just now paying for.
And also, the other thing that's happening that you see in this particular year is that when I got here, we needed to license more than we were licensing. So there are some additional costs on that. And some of those licenses that we had, for example, for antivirus, those run out. You buy a license for 3 years. I'm coming to the cycle this year that backup systems, it's here. So you'll see it in my department. You'll see like a curve going up or down, and then every 3 years it's gonna spike. It's kind of like how when we started those contracts.
I see. Councilor Matt?
How many full-time employees are in your department this year? 3. And 3 next year?
Yes.
How many were there last year? Well, we were supposed to have 3, but for 8 months I was down 1/3, and for 3 months I was by myself.
But that was that due to budgeting, or was that due to a lack of available personnel?
Basically, they got better jobs and moved on.
There's a 10.7% increase in salary and wages in your department. Can you explain that?
Some of them, when I first got here, I had a conversation with the mayor and Dennis, who used to be the HR director at the time. And I never ran a city before. So I said, I wasn't sure what I was going to need for staffing. So I said, let me go with level 1 desktop people and myself, and then I'll see what the city needs.
So basically, last year, I was able to really come up and say, hey, this is what I need. I need a network administrator. I need not a tier 1 desktop person, and me as the department head. So we then we made those positions be comparable in pay as to what they're being paid out there not even in corporate. It's more comparable to like what the school has.
So you, just to step in for 1 second, basically you made them more competitive with other technology jobs, possibly in the education or municipal sector.
In the municipal side,
but
yes. There's no way that we can actually pay what the corporate has.
Not Silicon
I mean, we
Valley,
tried.
yeah.
So basically, if you look up a network administrator, he's getting paid, it's being paid on par with what the network administrator is being paid at the school, and the same thing with my desktop person. He's not really a desktop, tier 1 desktop is a little higher, but we're a pretty slim team overall for the size of the systems that we have and projects. One thing that I should have put into this was that my team also does other things besides just the day-to-day part of it. We do a lot of other projects for the city. For example, we built the systems here, the studio system. Last year, we saved the city around $125,000 just on building security systems, this system here in-house, and savings on software as well.
Thank you. 1 second, Councilor Mass. I would point out, I think Carol's gone, but Carol Collins gave a supporting documentation of her department this year that listed out basically all the increases and as well as accomplishments. And if any department heads are looking for a template for how to deliver the budget, obviously you're here, so you can answer it yourself. But if you're ever wanting to, it was a nice format. Did you have a question, Councilor Mass?
I do have a couple more questions. Between fiscal 2018, which is last year, and next year's the proposed operating budget for next year, there's a 49.6% increase. So over 2 years, a 50% increase in this department. Can we anticipate this kind of growth to this department going forward, or are you now at a level where where you have the resources that you need to be able to maintain at sort of steady increases?
I do feel that I'm slim on the staffing side, but trying to build systems that would allow us to stay at this level as far as the staffing piece. As far as the bigger pieces of software that my department has taken in from other departments, most of them are there. As you can see from here, there are some other things that are coming in-house next year, but they're not as big. So I expect it, and you'll see that spike every 3 years or so as new licensing comes up that renews every 3 years. And in order to keep this budget at a lower level, some of the things that I had to do was, and I'll use the antivirus this time again, I went for that 1-year license instead of 3, even though getting a 3-year license is a much better savings overall. It could be up to 25%. Some of the other things that I can't control, for example, are tariffs. My department got hit pretty hard with those. For example, when I was building this network here, a switch that cost me $1,000. Same exact switch that I used at the DPW admin building cost me $1,500. $1,500 versus $1,000. So some of those things are really hard for me to predict because I don't know what's going to happen. When I build this budget, I get quotes, and it's they're usually good for 3 months, and it just gives it's a little bit of a guess as to how much it's going to be when I actually get there, like let's say in October or even next January. But I expected that this to be more as to where the budget is, because we also had those increases in the salaries, which were just happened now, and those spikes on the actual licensing costs aren't going to be as big.
Councilor Mass?
In this past year, how much, if any time, has your department spent supporting GSAT?
I don't support them.
You haven't spent any time supporting GSET, not just yourself, but your department?
No, they have their own IT team. They have their own networking piece. We don't support each other that way. When GSET had issues last year, I was part of the task force that the mayor set up. And even though I was by myself at that time, I did all the work for the town, and it was literally a labor of love, working long hours at night to try to help GSET as much as I could. I'm glad they have John there now, because now I don't have to worry about that. But we share space. So we have, and there's synergy between our departments. We're all nerds, so, but I don't actually do anything for them.
Thank you.
Or my department.
Councilor Mass.
Are you supporting the tech at the police department, or is that privately contracted?
I am.
You're handling all that?
Yes. We actually were able to get, we won a very competitive bid from the state, innovation in IT for municipal, on the municipal side, and we were able to build a state-of-the-art server for them. So those, I'm not very good at putting that stuff in there because it's usually rushing. But some of the things that that we saved that we did through state grant, and it was a very highly competitive grant. We're really proud that we got it.
Councilor Mass.
My last question, your counterparts on the school side, do you know how many there are there?
7 for Carroll, and yeah, Carroll has 7. GSET has more network administrators, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I guess that's all of our questions at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
So it is my understanding, and I would imagine that most of you know, we have a new health director in town, and she's here with us. And so at this time, I'd like to call up Ms. Valerie Bird. Health inspections is on page 119. Welcome. I also understand, is this your first day?
It is.
Welcome to Greenfield.
No, that's not even fair.
So this is a good opportunity so we can welcome her so she doesn't leave. I just want to say I want to thank Valerie for accepting the position to work for us. I'll let her talk more about herself, but she comes with, many years of experience as a health inspector and director. So I remember we recall back months ago when we were discussing funding for the office and going back and forth in a very healthy way. I had talked about the model that when I first came on board with the city of Greenfield that we had in the health department, where the director was also a inspector also. So I can say that we are back there again, and I look forward to obviously passing on that baton to now Valerie, so I no longer have the responsibility from an admin level for that office, because it's been a passion, but I think she's more qualified to be doing that job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
I do have 20 years experience, 20 plus years. I started off 25 years ago. My children were getting older and I was looking for something else to do. So I thought, I was a restaurant manager at the time, well, I'll run for the Board of Health. And I did. I subsequently won. And found out it was nothing to do with restaurant inspection. It was all septic and Title V and housing issues. So I actually learned from the bottom up. I took every Title V class, soil evaluator class, and actually did that work privately for a number of years, but still maintained health department. And now that I'm a little bit older, I enjoy doing the health department and being on the regulatory side.
Excellent. Well, thank you. We are really happy, I think, to have, again, a director inspector. Councilor Dolan?
Yes, thrilled is the word. Welcome to Greenfield. And definitely let us know what you need as you're going forward. I understand it's your first day. But I do have, to the extent that you're able to answer, what are your plans for staffing going forward? And, what's kind of the timeline that we can expect for getting this department fully staffed?
So what I'm looking at with the size of the city, it's too much for one person to do, me being an inspector/director. So one full-time health inspector besides myself would be needed, and the admin, and plus the public health nurse, and take care of that part of it. We do have an ad out for health inspector. I did review some of the applications today. We have 2 interviews set up for next week. See what goes from there.
Yeah, Councilor Dolan?
So just to clarify, the long-term plan is a full-time health inspector, a full-time admin, and then the part-time public health nurse. Is that correct? Okay, thank you.
And if we recall, that is the structure that we had talked about when the funding was, I don't want to use the word restored, but because we went through some transitioning with finance directors and numbers and all that. So I just want to go back in time when the office was, fully functioning at a level to meet the demands, probably more demands now since I've been with the city. It's going to need, obviously, the director has to be an inspector. So it can't be a director sitting behind the desk, he or she just, admin, that doesn't work. So having a director who's also obviously experienced inspector and having another inspector in that we do have a slot for. And I just want to I think it's necessary. I just want to go back for a minute to an article that was in the paper on I guess, Friday or Saturday. One of the things that Mayor Martin, he gave me the responsibility to really try to really identify what we can do for that office. And communication sometimes doesn't always go correctly, and sometimes when we're at this table, it gets heated and there's passions, happening. But in this situation, so we've had some good and bad situations happen with hiring. Those things happen. That's just the nature. As you all know, prior to coming to the city of Greenfield, I worked in staffing, and I worked for community action with folks who have barriers to employment. Then prior to that, I did that when I worked for the Cinecorp Foundation. So I have a background in that. So it doesn't always go the way you want it to go. The other thing about this field, it's very specialized. So it's not like at GCC or any other place you have people that are coming out, oh, I'm now a health inspector, I'm now a director. As Valerie said, it's actually, like you coming from the bottom up. So finding someone like Valerie, who actually is probably more aligned to the culture here. Sometimes it's not always easy to adapt to a place like Greenfield. Greenfield's a great place to live, but it's a different place. I mean, when I came here, it took me some time to obviously adapt. And I also want to say we go back and forth. But so that's some of the things, some people it's not always a good fit. But when some people leave, whether it's leave because it's obviously involuntary, that's a good thing when we identify that they're not a good fit, or because they choose to leave, because they don't give it enough time, or they feel it doesn't fit them at that point in time. So in this case, what may have happened with our last inspector leaving, it was a choice he made, not a choice because of politics or anything like that, and not even in management. What it would have helped probably would have been having a director at that time. If Valerie was on board, yes, he or she would have had that mentoring and all that. But that time was coming because Valerie had already accepted at the time that person was working for us. It's unfortunate, but that's a choice he made. And that's when, and for me, who the mayor gave me the opportunity to try what I could, I'm not a health inspector, I'm not a director, but try to keep the office together as much as possible. As you know, one of our former health inspectors came back to work with us on a contract basis, just 1 day a week, to try to at least hold on to make sure that we are maintaining our regulatory responsibilities, but also to maintain that this is also economic development too, because if we're not maintaining our restaurants, if we're not maintaining properly our housing stock and other things, who really wants to relocate and wants to live here? So I just fully wanted to say that because I know my time with the city is coming to a close, and I know this time for me to really speak on the health department, this is the last day, and I really never had a time to really speak on this. So I just thank you for
the time to say that. Thank you, Director Smith, for that and for all the work that you did in getting us through this point. I think this is a clear transition point, and it's time to turn over a new leaf. And I know the Board of Health is there to support you. I believe they have a vacancy, but now might be a great time for someone to come out and fill that vacancy and really start from the bottom up. So thank you. Are there any further questions about the Health Department budget? Seeing none, thank you. Director Byrd. So, at this time, I'll call the City Clerk, Kathy Scott, up to the table.
Oh, pager.
And we will be looking at a number of different sections here. It probably makes sense to start with the City Clerk line, which is on page 69.
So just to go over some of the increases, first thing is there are 4 people in the clerk and the council office inclusive. There is 1 part-time person, 1 NR, and 2 contract through 1 union. Part-time person is another union. There are all contractual agreements that are shown in the salary line, so that I hope covers that one item. Some of the increases in the clerk's budget, you'll see that there's an increase in bookbinding, a considerable increase. There haven't been books bound for a number of years, and we're trying to play some catch up so that we can get on a regular schedule to stay within the normal $1,000 budget, but we do need to play a little bit of catch up. Office supplies, there's always an increase because the cost of the office supply increases. Regular paper, toner, pens, pencils, staples, you know, the general. I do have included in there an amount for a desk. That would be for the clerk, because the desk I have is inadequate and I would like to face the public when they enter the office. There's an increase in meetings, seminars, education, as my hope, and it has been approved through the mayor, is to begin my education towards my municipal clerk certificate, CMC. I would be attending a week in July up in Plymouth, and there's a fee for that. Moving on to the council budget, again, council has lots of meetings. I don't know if you've noticed, but you know, you have lots of meetings. So we have to provide supplies to you guys so that you know.
What page is the council budget?
I'm sorry, page 56.
I'm sorry, could I interrupt? First of all, I want to thank you. You clearly have more experience with anyone else with these meetings, because you know exactly how to approach them. You anticipate all of our questions. But I think that for the format, we should actually go one at a time. Okay. So we'll take questions on the clerk's budget. Councilor Mass?
First of all, let me thank you for all of the work you've done since being appointed. As you'll remember, I abstained from that appointment, and you have solved my primary objection to your appointment, which is that you moved to Greenfield.
I actually was under contract for the house then, but I couldn't say anything, so.
Well, congratulations. We're happy to have you as a resident and citizen of Greenfield. I only have one question regarding the clerk's budget.
Yes.
I see that you requested more from the mayor's office, and that was not approved, but you were actually reduced from last year's amended budget. And I just want to understand, does that mean, do you have savings as a result of new employee hires, or are you going to have cuts as a result of the reduction in your permanent salary and wages line item?
So I believe, and I wasn't part of last year's constructing of the budget, but I believe that for a portion of the year, you were also paying the previous clerk out of this salary line and wages, and that's where I believe some of the savings is from. Everyone in the office is new in that position as of this year, so there is a small savings in the reduction of all of the staffing salaries.
Very good. Seeing no other questions, I think if you would like to continue with your city clerk explanation.
Council budget is on page 56.
Council 56.
Excuse me. I've already covered the office supplies. You know, if the council would just stop having special meetings all the time, it would be just great, just an FYI. Meetings and seminars, so there is an ordinance number 158 that requires funding for counselors to be able to attend training, education. That line in the past has been zeroed out, and I requested that funding be put in there because over the past year, there have been a few counselors that requested that they attend meetings, training, seminars, and there was no money for them to do that. So that's why that has increased, as well as, you know, general meetings, trainings, and seminars has also increased so that myself and Geneva can start attending trainings and seminars for our education for the clerk and assistant clerk position.
Very good. Councilor Mass?
The line item for mileage reimbursement, is that for counselors, the clerk to the council, the legislative aide within your office, or all three?
All.
And how much of it was budgeted based on your anticipated need of actual counselors? I know I could use all of that myself going back and forth to
Right.
MMA meetings.
So-
I just want to,
Are you talking about the meetings
And
and
I won't get-
seminars
I
or
won't
the
be eligible for
mileage? I'm sorry.
The mileage.
The mileage.
I mean, you asked for 5,800, the mayor gave 65.
Right. I'm unsure.
Oh, Mayor Martin, would you like to address this?
Thank you. In putting together a budget, there are some qualifiers that you always have to follow. One is, there's probably 4 or 5. One is that if there's an existing ordinance, you have to fund the ordinance. And so this ordinance is $500 per counselor. And so that's where you get the $6,500.
Can you send a copy of that ordinance to us? Maybe it needs to be revised.
Sure.
Sounds like Councilor Mass and I will be going to the casino a lot this year.
Actually, we did go, yes, it was fun to go to the casino with you, Councilor Wheeler.
Any other questions on the city council section before we move on to what's next? Elections?
Ours or elections.
Page 70, is that right?
Bouncing.
So elections, sorry, there will be 3 elections this year. One would be a possible primary in September, then a local election in November, and then the presidential state election in March 2020. The current wages for the election workers are at $11 an hour. I would love to be able to take them to 12, but I understand there needs to be a budget that we have to stay in. The election workers are fabulous people to be able to do such a long day. So there's purchases of service in here. You'll see an increase in the election budget under purchase of service. That is $20,000 to purchase a covering for the gymnasium floor that is both ADA requirement, meets ADA requirements, and it also meets fire code. It's been reviewed by the fire department and the building inspector. They've approved one that was proposed to them. The school would love us to have a covering to save their floor. And again, their costs increased for printing and supplies and contract service. Contract service would cover the programming of the packs for the election machines, the printing of the ballots for the local elections, that sort of thing.
Very good. Is it normal for poll workers to work all the way through the day? Do you know, through other cities and towns? It just seems like an awfully generous
It is a really
commitment.
long day. It is a huge commitment on their part, and I don't know how other towns or cities do that. For my purpose, I would prefer someone to work the entire day, because one of the challenges when running an election is to cover the poll workers' spots. So having to find 4 people for one precinct is so much easier than finding 8.
Councilor Dolan?
I think I know the answer to this, but I'd like a clear explanation. How do we avoid paying the minimum wage?
I would ask for some.
We are municipalities are not
Don't
subject
need
to minimum wage laws.
Yeah, we're not subject to minimum wage laws, but
That's too bad.
You know, I think back to last September. It was a horribly humid, terribly hot day, and we were in the gymnasium with all the body heat. We had the fans going, and all of those wonderful workers were there for 13 hours.
Yeah.
And it was ridiculously uncomfortable, and they're not even getting minimum wage.
Yeah.
They have some great commitment to this town.
Councilor Dolan?
Just a question about the covering for the floor.
Yes.
So that's the $20,000 increase in line 5200? Purchase of service.
Yes, it is.
Why is that called purchase of service if we're actually purchasing an object? Just curious.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know.
Any other questions? Councilor Mass?
I just want to make sure my calculations are correct. There's currently, you're paying $11 an hour. There's currently a proposal before the council to raise the minimum wage for town employees to $15 an hour. As I calculate that, that would be 13 hours times 9 precincts times 4 poll workers per precinct times 3 elections times an additional $4 an hour. That would be approximately $56,000 that would be needed to be added to, or sorry, $5,600 that would need to be added to your budget to
I
accommodate
have
that.
not done those calculations, but
The underlying assumptions are correct?
yes, yes.
The other question I have for you is, this budget is built on 3 elections. What is the cost if the council chooses to have a special election this year?
Although I have not put the calculations together myself.
Estimated.
The numbers that I have always heard in the past is between 10, 12, and 15,000.
Thank you.
Okay. Registrars.
Which page?
I think it's the next page, 71.
Registrars is.
Is that right?
Again, just one moment, please.
No, take your time.
The registrar's budget does have a small amount that we pay to the registrars. That has increased very minimally. The budget is used for paying of street lists and partially paying for census. So there is, again, a small increase, and it just covers the cost for what we basically need to do to contract for.
Right, printed materials. Councilor Mass?
Because you raised the issue of census, I know you're talking about street lists, our municipal census.
Municipal census.
Is there any support in any of your departments related to the 2020 federal census that we're going to be doing? Do you have any costs associated with that out of your office?
I do not.
Okay.
I do not at this time.
Is it possible that you might incur those in the future and we might have to revisit that?
Yes, I believe so, but again, that's a strict guess. I don't have any numbers.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the city clerk? Seeing none. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
All right. So, we are now going to double back to building inspections on page 92. Am I correct that this is it for department heads who are here to make their statements to Ways and Means? All right, just wanted to make sure there wasn't anyone I wasn't seeing. Building inspections is page 92. I'm presuming we can call Director Gilman and the mayor up if we have questions for them. Otherwise, we can skip and deliberate at a later date. Does anyone have questions? Councilor Mass?
Director Gilman or the mayor, whoever wants to answer this, I calculate between the fiscal year 2019 amended, that's with the money added back into the budget, and this year, a 13% increase to permanent salary and wages. Can you discuss what contributed to that 15% increase, or 13% increase, I'm sorry?
Obviously, partial was SSCA contract settlements and clerical, as well as the inspector funding a higher level for the, what was Nick's position?
Inspector.
Inspector?
Yeah.
All right. So the second inspector was very part-time. So in this past year, we funded it with an amount from stabilization, but that was only for a partial year. So now you have a full year of funding that position.
Councilor Mass?
So just so I'm clear, this is one inspector, one director, inspector / inspector, an admin, but not a part-time third inspector.
No.
Thank you.
That's correct.
Yeah, correct.
Total of three.
Councilor Dolan?
Just a general question for Director Gilman. This document, FY20 General Fund Remaining Departments, that's in the Google Drive, is the FY19 in this adopted or amended? Or do you happen to know?
For the salaries?
Yeah.
Amended.
Okay, so this is the higher of the two numbers.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions around building inspections?
I just want to say for Mark Snow, he's ill today.
Oh, yeah. And in case Director Snow is watching at home, I do want to say that I hope that if this department is funded in the way that it's presented in the mayor's budget, that it represents a commitment to the department, and that, again, like the health department, we would like to start fresh and to rejigger the department in such a way that we can hopefully not only inspect what we need to inspect, but also raise the inspection permitting fees that would come with a fully staffed department.
Just so you know, Valerie has already started looking at the fee structure on the health side. And I think with Valerie and now Mark, I think with them together, we'll be beginning to see some better progress and opportunities here for Greenfield.
Excellent. Councilor Mass.
Does part of that examination of the fee structure include looking at what we charge compared to our neighboring towns who charge drastically less for inspections?
Yes, just so you know, Councilor Mass, and time escaped me. It been 6 months or a year ago. I actually had the admin clerk begin to look at our neighboring communities to see what they're charging and begin that analysis, but then it got put to the side, so I was able to pull the document out today. And then again, this is Valerie's first day, but she now has that document.
All right. I think that's all for buildings at this time. But why don't you two stay up here, because I'm sure we'll have more questions, if not immediately. So recreation on page 128. This is pretty straightforward, but do counselors have questions? I know also that I forgot to mention that if there are capital requests that go along with these departments, that we can address those now too, but I don't believe that recreation, any of their capital requests made it through. All right. That one's pretty straightforward. We're going to move on to central maintenance, page 80.
You said?
80.
80.
And I'll just summarize George's communications to the committee, which were that there's a $10,000 increase, which reflects $10,000 to lease a bucket truck, the bucket truck that we all, I think, know so well because I think he asks for it every year, and was denied by the Capitol, or not denied, but suggested that he might roll it into his budget, and so he did. Councilor Mass.
So last year, the council funded repairs to the lighting at the Greenfield Middle School. And we followed up on that, and we've asked repeatedly when that work is going to be done. We were told February vacation, or we were told Christmas vacation, and then we were told April vacation. It's now past April vacation, and the understanding I have is some of the delay is work that needs to be done by the central maintenance department that has not yet been done to accommodate that. Can you tell us what the delay is related to getting the lighting repaired at the Greenfield Middle School auditorium? I'd like not to sit in the dark at my kids' concerts.
This morning, George happened to mention this. But he said he was waiting for some parts and they are going to get on it, but that's my understanding from this morning's meeting.
Fair to say that that will not be completed by the end of the school year?
No, I thought he said the next few weeks.
Yeah, we'll defer that. We'll follow back with the director.
Yeah.
We'll respond to that. I don't want to
Confirm, but I'm pretty sure he said within a few weeks, so I'll
The
confirm
parts will
that.
be in, but they won't be able to do the work while students are in session. Generally, that's why we were looking at vacations.
Yes.
So is it fair to believe that it will be completed before school starts next year?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions on central maintenance? Yeah, Councilor Dolan?
This could be for Director Gilman or the mayor. There's a longstanding problem at the intersection of Main and Federal Street where the traffic lights don't recognize the...
We ask this question every year.
We ask this question every year for who knows how many years now. I'm assuming that there's no money in this budget for that project. Are you not familiar with this? Oh, you're the only one in town. There's a problem traveling in both directions on Main Street where in the morning when the sun is at a certain angle, the light just doesn't change. And it just doesn't change and everybody runs the red light. It's extremely dangerous. It's just as dangerous as it is intermittent. And the director of central maintenance told me that it would cost $16,000 to fix. I'm just assuming that there's not money in this budget for that.
No, there's not, so I'm sorry. But why is that central maintenance?
They handle the lights.
Yeah, it's a traffic light issue. Thank you.
One last question, and this may be a misunderstanding on my part. Non-school janitors, are they centralized under central maintenance, or are they assigned to the various departments?
School janitor.
No, the school department janitors are not covered by central maintenance. Does central maintenance cover the janitors for the other facilities within the town?
Yes.
So theoretically, the same janitors who clean town hall, clean the police station, the fires, other departments could potentially do janitorial work here at the senior center or the John Zahn Community Center. It's the same department.
It's the same department. I don't know, George, again, would just better speak to this in terms of their time or whether it's hours, the availability,
But they're in this department, they're not within the Council on Aging budget.
Correct.
Thank you.
I think we're done on that.
Okay, moving on from central maintenance. There's plumbing and wire inspections on page 132. That's outsourced to FERCog. We do have a report from them that I would encourage counselors to take a look at. It should be in your email. It's pretty straightforward. Licensing Commission, page 72. So just looking at this, it looks like they requested a full-time, but we're sticking with the same part-time structure that we've had.
Correct.
Okay. Any questions? Councilor Mass?
How many hours per week does that part-time position represent?
30?
4 days a week.
Is that at that rate, is it a benefited position?
Yes, sir. And union.
Just so you know, 20 hours is a benefited position.
Over 20, meaning.
20 and over.
Yeah. Any other questions on licensing? All right, moving on to the library, page 126. Is that right? 127? Yeah. All right, so, I have a couple questions on this. Number one, the library offset receipts, which is a cherry sheet. Is that rolled into do we see that on their budget here or?
No, you do not.
Because that money goes straight to the library.
In a state revenue or a state grant fund.
Yeah, very good. And my second question is, there are the wages here. Well, let me think. Actually, I didn't do the numbers here, but because there's an increase in full-time, but there's a decrease in part-time. I'm assuming that is the increase in full-time, if you know, is step-related or contractual?
There's just about every staff member there is in clerical, a tremendous amount in clerical and SSEA.
Yeah. But the part-time, am I correct in assuming that that reflects cuts of a couple of really part-time employees?
Correct.
Yeah. Councilor Mass?
So you're saying no part-time employee was bumped up to full-time?
Not as far as I'm aware, no.
Councilor Mass?
If you can walk me through this, because I guess I'm a little foggy, my memory from last year. The budget book shows $441,276 permanently salary and wages, $88,718 adopted for part-time. That was adopted at the regular council meeting. My recollection is that was fully funded at the level of request by the library last year, that there were no cuts made by the council. You're showing an amended budget with an additional 21,000 in full-time and an additional little over 1,000 in part-time. I don't recall making those increases to that budget. Can you remind us when and why that increase was made in the amended budget?
When you move money from contract stabilization, it goes into each of these accounts.
This was contract stabilization from the contract.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilor Dolan.
Looking at your document, it looks like the part-time line was the loss of 2 positions at something like 0.2. Were those voluntary, or do those represent layoffs? Do you know?
This is up to the director to determine how to best deal with.
I was just curious.
Okay.
Well, I would assume, based on that the request was decreased in the budget, in the mayor's budget, that there is some adjustments that will have to be made. Any other questions on the library budget? I'm just gonna, I would like to stick up for the library employees here and say that all of them do a really good job. I'm not sure I support this cut. I know the part-timers at the library tend not to work a lot of hours, and so it tends to be something that maybe they're supplementing their income with, and I think a lot of the really part-time people are really generous in contributing to the community in that way, and so I just want to thank them for that. Councilor Mass.
I just want to verify the cut in salary and wages. It doesn't represent a cut in services or hours, does it? I mean, hours of operation for the library, not.
No. Again, it's up to the director to how best move around.
I'm not questioning her management authority. I'm just the impact of the decision. Does it reduce hours, or does it reduce services in any way?
Yeah, my short answer is no.
Thank you.
All right. I believe that we have gotten through the small departments. Thank you both so much. So, at this time, it's to the pleasure of the board whether we would like to deliberate to any degree. Councilor Mass.
Well, I know there was some question about when we would deliberate. I am not available next Thursday, so I will leave it this board. If it does, I know Councilor Alice can't be here tonight, and I have no skin in the game as to whether or not this is done, whether I'm here or not, because I can always make my arguments at full council, but to share with my colleagues. I'm of the opinion that the most important issue for me in this budget, if I were going to make a cut, and I think there's many places where cuts could be made, I don't know that the impact that the council would like to try to achieve, even if we were all agreed, and I'm not saying that we would be all agreed on those cuts, would necessarily be effectuated by the executive in the next 6 months if we made those cuts. I think it would have a different impact than we intended. The one area where I think we can, and of course we can't add, so we're talking about cuts. The one area where I think we can make an actual impact that is a policy-related impact rather than just sort of education for the public, which is what most of this process has been about, is in the assessing department. I have long held the view that the privatization of the assessing department was a mistake. I know there's a disagreement with the executive. I don't think I'm alone in that belief that this having a full-time assessor that is in the field, who's a town employee, is a valuable asset to the town. My belief is that at best, our contractors who haven't been able to do the one thing the council asked, which is 100% reassessment of commercial property, and that we fully funded. At best, they're doing their assessments by a drive-by process where they're driving by. I suspect that a large part of their assessment process is done through satellite technology and imagery and data processing. And those are valuable tools and they should be used. However, what they do not tell you is when someone does not pull a building permit, yet has a contractor into their house and completely remodels. That can only be effectuated by going into the building. And not only are we losing the income from recovering those building permit fees from not having gotten those, we're losing the revenue from correct assessments based on the interior of property. And while you'll never get into every property, having a full-time assessor who has relationships with the people in the community is much more likely to have that happen. There's sort of the old adage from Simon and Garfunkel, when the tax man comes, the house looks like a rummage sale. Well, that's there because people understand you really need eyes on the house to make an assessment. We do not have that. Councilor Mayo made a full-throated effort to prevent privatization of our DPW. And I certainly, we may not agree on that, but I understand the spirit that came from. DPW has not been privatized. The one area that we know has been privatized, and the mayor is now proposing to completely privatize, is the assessing department. And we can prevent that. The way we can prevent that is by a 100% zeroing out of contracted services in the assessing department. And by doing that will prevent any additional assessments for 6 months, but it will allow a new mayor who has a new perspective to reevaluate and make a decision about whether or not to hire a full-time employee for that department through a supplemental budget. I anticipate we're going to have 2 years of free cash that will be certified over the course of the next year, so there will be plenty of money to add someone next year out of free cash, and there will be money for the following year because we're not budgeting this, to add in an employee. I would urge my counselors to make a recommendation to zero at that line item. I'm not sure I'm supportive of the budget as a whole anyway, and I may have, and I'm willing to talk about that, but the one targeted thing I think we can do is in that item, and I would ask my colleagues to seriously consider doing that.
Thank you, Councilor Mass. I appreciate those comments. Director Gilman.
I'm going to respectfully ask the council to speak with the Assistant Assessor, Kim Yu, before doing this. I believe that that is Kim's goal ultimately, but she needs the support along the way to get there. But again, Kim very adamantly spoke to me saying she needs this particular contractor, at least until she can get to a certain level. So I just respectfully, if you could speak with the assistant assessor, if you would like to, we can make the arrangements for her to be there.
Thank you, Director. Councilor Mass?
First, let me say I thought we were in deliberations, which means counselors speaking amongst themselves. Second, I would point out to my colleagues that the assessing department was invited in, and we did have deliberations. Not that I'm opposed to speaking to our professional staff. Third, I'd point out that that employee has been made the chief assessor and is no longer the assistant assessor. While that may be a goal, this budget doesn't reflect that goal. This budget reflects a full year of contracted services and no appropriation for salary and wages. And if I could amend the budget in such a way to take money out of contracted services and put it into full-time salary and wages, even if I could do it for half the year, right, and put a half-year employee in, I would be inclined to do that. But this council doesn't have the power. The only way we can effectuate what we want is to do a zeroing out and let the mayor send us a supplemental request, which we can fund.
Noted. I will attempt to speak with Ms. Mew. Just in terms of process, during deliberations now and going forward, I will be allowing questions. I see multiple department heads here, and I appreciate that. I will give them a chance to defend their budgets even in the middle of deliberations. I don't think we are gonna go into deliberations tonight. It's after 8 o'clock, and we don't have a full committee here. I would like to ask another question of you, Director Smith. And I know you addressed this already, but and this may be more of a question for the mayor, but if you can answer it. The structure of the mayor's office, I believe, has the funding in the FY20 budget for, I'm gonna say, one less employee than it has historically funded. Is that correct? And am I correct that there is some freedom for the new mayor to make their own choices about how to staff?
Well, I think in the...
Oh, and to clarify, I'm referring to your office as well as the executive.
Well, as you know, for my line item, for my position is, assuming the council funds it, is through December 31st.
That's right.
Of this year. In the mayor's office, obviously, is a mayor's salary, and then there's a salary there for support staff to provide their services to the mayor.
Councilor Dolan, if you have the document up, if you don't, we'll forget it.
The budget book?
No, the salaries.
Yes, I do.
Just because traditionally this is funded a coordinator of constituent services, an executive assistant, and then the director of administration. And so I just want to be clear about what it could possibly fund going forward. And I'm doing this mainly for the purposes of public discussion and for the council to understand what we are approving. Councilor Mass? Thank you.
So in the mayor's executive item, it was pretty clear to me during our discussions in the mayor's office that there is no need for a second person in procurement. That essentially this is a transition plan there was no rationale for that second person. There's a transition plan to have an employee who's retiring half year be replaced by someone in the mayor's office now to be fully trained to take over the full-time position that's supposed to retire at the end of the year. So I certainly understand that. But there's not the work for those two people. And I don't know that it takes a whole year to train for that position. I also don't know that there's not the capability of working in the mayor's office and training at the same time. Additionally, there's a position in the mayor's office for I believe, for an executive assistant and I believe it's budgeted for a full year. And I can't believe that anyone is going to take that position in the next 6 months. And so it would seem to me without, I don't know that, obviously we cut the budget, the mayor does what he wants with it, right? It would seem to me that a employee in procurement who is currently also covering in the mayor's office anyway could be moved into the mayor's office for that half year and then retire and then open that position up for the new mayor, and at the same time be training the other employee on procurement issues and have them ready for the end of the year. I know that's not the mayor's plan, but I think there is some money there. I obviously, the mayor will do whatever he wants with it if we cut and could end up cutting an employee. That's one of the issues where I said we make a cut, the consequences may be different than what we hope to have happen.
Yes. Mayor, would you like to speak to this? I'm just trying to wrap my head around it because it's a little complex.
I help clarify. So I think you're talking about the mayor's office. Is that the
Well, the
focus?
question was to the mayor's office and to, I understand, director of administration is
Right.
separate.
So including, say, the general administration and the mayor's office.
Yes.
So we will have an executive assistant fully funded for the year, a receptionist clerk fully funded for the year, a mayor fully funded for the year as of January 1st.
Okay.
So any cut there, the only difference in the finances is that the mayor as of January 1st will be $35,000 from January 1st to June 30th.
Right.
Because of the ordinance. The same situation will be in procurement, 2 procurement people funded for a year.
Okay. And the community and constituent services position?
That's funded for a year.
It is. Okay. All right. Thank you. Any further questions? Councilor Mass.
Can we ask
There's an executive assistant.
Yes, you may.
Mayor Martin?
But her position is funded.
Mayor Martin,
Yes.
you have 2 positions budgeted for in your office for next year, fully funded for the full year, correct? In your direct office, right across the hall from you.
Yes.
And one of those is filled.
One of those is, one is filled now.
Yeah. Do you believe you're going to be able to hire someone for the other position prior to January?
Well, if we don't have the funds, no.
But if you did have the funds, do you believe you'll be able to hire someone?
Yes. Why would you think?
So you're advertising as a temporary employment?
That's possible.
And currently, is it fair to say that one of the 2 procurement officers is covering down in that position now?
No. So we have the executive assistant in the office, mayor's office. We have Audrey comes over once in a while because she's familiar with the office.
Yeah, she covers down. She covers that office and helps out.
She has her procurement job. That's what she does.
Yeah, but she also works in your office as well.
Yes.
Is it feasible? Could we make it through the year with just 1 procurement officer and the second procurement officer who's about to retire working in your office and training the other employee in your office on procurement? Could that happen?
Well, let's talk about it. How would you do it?
I would take the second procurement officer, eliminate that position, and have you transfer that employee into your office for the unfilled position, And while in the same office with the employee that you want to train to take over procurement at the end of the year, be able to train them when not doing the function in the mayor's office, which is currently being done by one employee.
So let's, no, it's, I'm also in the mayor's office.
Well, okay.
And I'm doing a little bit more than I should be doing because we don't have anyone there. And because we've had another problems that we work with all departments. Mark, Liz, I, and Lindsay are in several departments. But let's take your suggestion. We've got procurement 1, procurement 2. Procurement 1 is retiring December 31st after 20, or a number of years. Procurement number 2 is retiring June 30th. So if you lay one off, which one do you want to lay off?
Mayor, I'm not suggesting laying any.
Of course you are. You're saying
I'm suggesting transferring them into the department that's for an unfilled position.
You're saying transfer one procurement person to the office of mayor.
That's right. For a position that could only be filled by a temporary employee.
That might be possible. We've got to work through the contract, look at the contract and see how we can discuss that.
Last question. Could you give the council an answer so we will know if we made that cut, whether you would follow our plan or whether you would ignore it? Because it would be, I think it would be important to councilors to know. I don't think any of us are looking to lay off a longtime employee, and it sounds like it's something you're open to if your contract will allow it. And although it would be a hardship, and I'm not saying it wouldn't be a hardship on your office and probably put a bigger burden on you personally, but it would be helpful for us to know whether if our intent would be effectuated.
So let's still think it through. January 1st, there would be only the mayor and the executive assistant because that temporary procurement number 1 was moved and now is gone.
Yeah, so it would open that position up for a mayor to make a hire.
You didn't fund it.
That's not what I'm proposing.
What are you not funding then?
The second procurement position.
And who's going to do the business for the city? You're saying one procurement officer.
Yes.
So Councilor Mass is saying one procurement officer is enough for the city of Greenfield. And then that would mean that the next mayor only has one choice to declare the CPO. Because the mayor designates the chief procurement officer. So you're deciding, and you're leaving the 31st, I'm leaving the 31st, and you're saying, well, heck with it, whoever's there is one procurement officer can take care of that, even though we've had 2.
Councilor Mass.
Mayor, didn't you say before us?
No, I didn't. You quoted me 3 times on that. I didn't say that.
You didn't even.
Yeah, I know the question.
What I was going to say.
You've been repeating it often and often. So you said the last time we spoke of this that I said there could only be one procurement officer. I said that if the next mayor wants only one procurement officer next FY21, then that's up to the next mayor.
All right, I'd like to step in, gentlemen. I understand it's hard to wrap your head around some of these things, and it's a difference. But to clarify, I think where we're at is that Mayor Martin is saying that it's not inconceivable that the job could be done by one procurement officer, but that would be up to the next mayor, and that is not something that you would recommend at this time.
Pass on to the next mayor.
Yeah. I would like to do a couple of, just talk about where certain things are at in terms of the budget process. There was a request that came into the council from the school committee to fully fund their budget. This was part of the process for if the council were to vote to fully fund, which would amount to an increase from the mayor's budget. This is their attempt to remain within Mass General Law. Obviously, we will be discussing the school's budget in depth during our deliberations and then again at council. Chapter 70 money has increased slightly. The Senate Ways and Means budget proposal is about $200,000 higher than the House. So the deficit that we're or the difference that we're looking at between the school committee's recommendation and the mayor's recommendation, I believe, without crunching the numbers, is in the 1.11 to $1.1 million range. Is that? And you don't need to go on record but I think that's where we're at. And also the charter tuition reimbursement was raised slightly. We also, counselors also have a memo from the mayor detailing potential impacts of cuts. And this came in today. I haven't had a chance to look at this. This is another reason to wait to deliberate. Thank you for the information. I'll take a look at this later on, and department heads are still welcome to continue to join us for this process. We will begin to deliberate before the next council meeting. And actually, before I get to that, the charter allows the Ways and Means Subcommittee to elect a secretary, and so I'm actually going to probably put that on the agenda for the next meeting, mainly so that some of the notes could be taken by a secretary, should anyone choose to elect one. Councilor Mass.
Just a question about the process. It would be helpful to have a report from our finance director about the impact, specifically as to Prop 2.5, if the council were to take action to appropriate funds to the school department, specifically their request, without making corresponding cuts to other departments. And I don't think we have that information. I think it's important for us to.
I believe the law does not allow the council to raise the school department's budget beyond Proposition 2.5. Is that correct, Director Gilman?
That's correct, but I believe what Councilor Mass is asking, and I actually have this, I could go up certain increments right up to the full request amount so that you can see the impact.
Yes, and I will also attempt to have numbers detailing what the tax rate would do. I think it would make sense for us to have that as well. Is there anything else at this time? Seeing none, our next meeting is 6 p.m. at the high school now on May 15th. And presumably our final deliberation meeting will be May 16th at 6 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
All of our productions at GCTV are sponsored in part by Bay State Health, providing the care you and your family need when you need it, close to home. Visit them online at baystatehealth.org. Greenfield Savings Bank. Visit them at 400 Main Street in Greenfield. Call them at 774-3191 or go online to greenfieldsavings.com. Greenfield Community College, providing access and excellence in higher education in the Pioneer Valley. Visit them at gcc.mass.edu. The Hammond Family. The Hammond family are longtime supporters of Greenfield Community Television. New Fortune Chinese Restaurant on the Mohawk Trail in Greenfield. Visit them online at newfortunema.com. Call them at 772-0838 and check them out on Facebook. Real Cleaning Services, cleaning Hampshire and Franklin County since 1972. We don't cut corners, we clean them. Check them out online at realclean.com. Call them at 413-422-1143. People's United Bank. located at 45 Federal Street in Greenfield. You can call them at 774-3713 or visit them online at peoples.com. The Solar Store of Greenfield, replacing fossil fuels and nuclear power one home at a time. Visit them at 23 Fisk Ave. Call them at 413-772-3122 or visit them online at solarstoreofgreenfield.com. Thank you to our sponsors for supporting all of GCTV's productions.
You're